Welcome to Between Three Witches, where we talk about witchcraft in plain sight, everyday magic lived honestly. And it's hosted by three witches: me, Gail the Witch Next Door,
me, the Weedy Green Witch,
and me, Anon, the Anonymous Witch.
We all walk different paths with different levels of experience, but we share a deep respect for the craft as it is actually practiced, and not the dramatised version people expect.
Well, hello! It's Anon here, the Anonymous Witch from Between Three Witches. And today, this is my episode of Words from the Witches. Today, I would like to talk to you about the fairies, or the fae, or the others. I mean, the terms and the labels go on. I was first introduced to the others by my Mam Gi, or my grandmother, when I was about 3 or 4 years of age. And I've been collaborating and working with them now for over 4 decades. I'm old, man. So this is going to be a brief introduction of my beliefs and understanding. So let's step into that magical realm and leave this world for just a moment. Now, it's hard to pinpoint when we as humans first interacted with the fairies. To me, they are as ancient as the elements themselves, and I would usually refer to them as the ancient ones or the immortals. The first rough ideas of them appearing, however, are more nature-based spirits. And we see this in Homer's Iliad, where he describes nymphs and dryads, these semi-divine beings that were connected to sacred spaces, trees and springs. They were also described as human in appearance and protectors. And this goes back about 1000 BC. Also, in Persian mythology, we see fairies being described as beautiful winged spirits, but neither good or bad. Now, I'm not saying these are the fairies that we understand today, but I was very intrigued of the description. We also see similar imagery of human-like beings with a sense of supernatural power, with images such as Eros, cherubs, and dare I even say, the angels. Not in a modern sense, but if we strip things right back, the parallels of imagery is there. In Celtic and Germanic traditions, fairies were often seen or considered as shrunken versions of former gods. Now, fairies were described as human in appearance, sometimes tall, sometimes small, some with wings, some without. This is a complex mix, and it may be due to natural migration and or war and conflicts, old beliefs and traditions that have been interwoven through time, and not forgetting potential language barriers and someone's personal interpretation of oral tales. So they might say it back in a version that they would actually prefer. And I believe we see a sense of author's interpretation of these ancient tales when monks decided to record and write them down. We see a sense of Christian ideas being threaded through. We see this motif where they have described fairies as fallen angels rather than their true identity, describing them not good enough for heaven and not bad enough for hell. Despite the Christian ideas being interwoven, they did record these tales within history, and I'm going back to the 12th, 13th and 14th century. They understood how important these spirits were to our ancestors. They saw how much value we held for them and knew they would not be eradicated out of our culture and belief system. Now, I do hear this phrase a lot, the umbrella term associated with the fairies, which, to be honest, isn't always helpful, is it? Some view elves and brownies or the boobarks from Wales as being part of this under that umbrella fairy term. Now, these beings are usually connected to the land and the home, small in stature, and some say small enough to be unseen. If treated kindly and with respect, it is said that they will help protect livestock, churn butter, sweep the floors, thank you very much, protect the home and the animals, and attract luck. Now, I'm not sure if I would place them under this umbrella term of the fairies. However, I do believe they are part of that other world. So where does this term fairy come from? I hear you ask. Well, hang on, I'll tell you now. It is said it originated from the Latin word fatum or fata, which basically means that which has been spoken. So in a sense, it's like prophecy or fate. Now, language evolved, and we then start to see French influence with the term fée. We then add the suffix of eerie, and together what do we get? Fairyman. This, however, was not used to describe these spirits. It was more connected to describing enchantment or magic. Eventually, it became a way of describing enchanted land or fairyland. And then much later, around the late 14th century, we see the word being used for individual beings. Now, the tales of fairies not only became popular with these written texts, but also through plays and art. And we see this beautiful romanticized version of the fairies being depicted by artists such as Cecile Barker. And I have to say, I'm a huge fan. I love these creations. We can see how people were inspired by nature itself and depicted their wings in art, like insect wings, butterfly wings, and even using petals for wings. Here we see the artist fully connecting the image of the fairy and bringing it back into nature. We see fairies being attached to flowers, trees, and the elements once again. And I believe these ideas have always been there, but this era rejuvenated it once again. Now, I hear a lot of people, in a way, completely disregarding this image of fairies, these small, whimsical, beautiful beings, almost in a way of, if you believe this image, then you're wrong. You're too naive. Absolute rubbish, right? As I've already described, the image of fairies, the idea of fairies is vast and beautifully mixed. These spirits are ancient, and believe you me, they will present themselves to you in ways that is comfortable to you. If you are respectful of their space and their land, and that image is actually all you can manage, they will work with you in that. We need to stop demoralizing someone's personal experiences with these ancient spirits. Even if their experience is very different from yours, it does not make it wrong. Now, okay, I hold my hands up. Traditionally, when we look back at ancient and medieval texts, not forgetting You had author's interpretation, right? But fairies were described as human form, as real as you or I. And we as humans were able to interact with them. They were described as beautiful and alluring, dressed in fine clothing and connected to deep moral codes and rules, connected to nature, sacred spaces. Spirits we can collaborate with, but with knowledge that if we break our promises to them, then naturally they will not receive this well. There are also threads of the being connected to abductions and even death. I believe this idea of them being described as fair, which some have connected to their appearance, as in beautiful, I rather connect the fairness to justice. We see this thread or theme in so many folklore stories. One is from my homeland of Wales, where we see that actually fairies can be very fair to us as humans. The tale is The Physicians of the Myddfai, and it centres around a remote lake, Llyn Ifan Fach, in the Black Mountains of Carmarthenshire. A young farmer falls endlessly in love with a fairy woman who emerged from the lake. He proved his love to her by making her a variety of different breads, hard, soft, medium, and eventually he found the right type of bread for her. And eventually they married. However, there was a clause, there was a contract. The fairies warned him, trigger warning, if you hit this fairy woman 3 times, she will leave you. And over time, he did. During this time, however, she birthed 3 beautiful sons. When she left, she took her fairy dowry with her, the magical cattle, the magical livestock, and returned back to the lake. The farmer was devastated. However, she did not leave her 3 sons behind. She would regularly interact with them and teach them herbalism and medicinal healing. She taught them the properties of nature, and the sons, once they became older, became the physicians of the Myddfai and was recorded in the 14th century. And they shared their knowledge with the people around them. Now, we don't see stories like this just from Wales. We have stories of fairies warning us not to take from their lands or not to eat their food. They are trying to warn us. They're trying to work with us. They know that as humans, we make mistakes. That at times we need a bit of guidance. We are warned not to defile their sacred lands. We are warned not to enter fairy rings. I mean, how would you feel, honestly, if someone deliberately and purposefully entered your home, your sacred space, yeah, and showed no respect, no gratitude, ruined your home, broke your precious objects, and stole from you? Think about it. And yes, these are tales to warn people to stay on the known path, not to wander too far. Just because someone is beautiful and dressed in finery does not mean they can be trusted. But they're more than tales. They're more than warnings. These tales are evidence that these spirits exist, and they exist now. They are ancient, powerful spirits that have lasted an eternity, and they've been walking among us since we as humans came on to this earth, since we were created. They live in the other world between that very thin veil. We don't have to see them. Sometimes we can sense them. We can feel that they are near. We can hear them. We have a sense of them. And you don't have to be in a forest to experience them. Unfortunately, things have been built on ancient grounds. And I truly believe you have a sense of them every so often, even in busy city centres. If you are curious about fairies, it's quite likely you've already encountered them already. My personal belief is that they are genuinely beautiful spirits. And yeah, treat with respect, like you would any spirit that we work with. You know, all this about being really cautious and don't work with the fairies. There are many people out there that would say don't work with this certain deity either. Don't work with that certain god or goddess. Follow your gut. Follow your heart. Follow what is calling you. If you enter with respect, with love, and with kindness, and have this understanding that relationships to build upon take time, then they will slowly build up that trust with you. They will slowly work with you. It is said that they are more likely to be attracted to people that are connected to that enchantment, that magic, that inner child vitality, man. So if you're curious, then we can absolutely discuss this further. My next episode is going to be how can we connect? How can we invite them in? But also how we can deter them if you want to. Right, there we are. Love you, bye.